I think The Last of Us might be the most schizophrenic show of all time. It's exhausting. It's like they have two different writing groups alternating between episodes. It's very inconsistent. That being said, this episode was much closer to the balance that I was referring to that was lacking last week. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
I always find it hilarious when I don't 100% agree or disagree with the direction of a story. Because my opinion on a show changes from week to week because I'm a person and not a robot.
Fool this man!
And when that happens, suddenly I'm getting hit with hate from both sides of the aisle. One week I'm a shill who's not a real fan because I like an episode. The next week I'm not a real fan because I don't like an episode. That was literally a DLC story that we didn't need. I had someone tell me last week about my unflattering review of that waste of time that I just didn't understand The Last of Us. It's never been about the action or the horror. It's all about the personal drama between the characters.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
And to those people, I would simply retort that nothing about this show requires any kind of extra intuitive thinking. All I was really asking for was that this show execute the same amount of balance between horror, action, and drama that the game did. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I'm not dealing in absolutes here. Great storytelling like the game is entertaining in all aspects. And that's what separates that story from this show. And I assure you, they are not the same.
That makes sense.
That being said, this episode demonstrates some of that balance that I was talking about, ironically enough, and gives me a story that is more in line with what I was expecting when I started watching it. This is the episode we should have gotten last week instead of Mall Madness, because believe it or not, story structure does matter as it pertains to how people absorb that story.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
This episode features Ellie encountering a new group of people led by a somewhat eccentric preacher. After Ellie kills a deer that they happen to find first, Ellie bargains with them to get penicillin for Joel, who is still suffering somewhere in a basement. And at this point, the preacher seems like a relatively straightforward guy. But as the episode progresses, he does reveal a darker side to his personality.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on! Let's get nuts.
I do have to say that I thought the preacher character was well written and well acted. And we got enough about him to make him seem like a formidable enough threat. And we did that without dedicating too much unnecessary time exploring him. Again, we're achieving balance here, and understanding you have a limited time to tell this story. Anyway, come to find out, one of the people that Joel killed while on the road was a member of this community, and somehow the preacher has figured this out. So the initial plan is to punish Joel and capture Ellie.
Because it's all part of the plan.
Who the preacher has taken a liking to. This is the second time in this show, by the way, that a character has seen something special in Ellie. Something that makes her look like a future leader to them. And I have to be honest, I just really don't see it. It's one thing to tell me that Ellie would make a great leader. It's another thing to make me believe it. And they just haven't done that.
Put some effort into it!
Anyway, eventually Ellie is captured and imprisoned, and now a barely recovered Joel must go and find her. And he does so by capturing two of the group's members and interrogating them. And this is probably the most ruthless we've seen Joel up until this point. I guess the general idea is that all bets are off when it comes to rescuing Ellie. It shows you how much he actually cares about her now. Joel eventually gets the info he needs about her location, and he kills both men brutally. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Ellie discovers that these people are actually cannibals.
Let's gut the freaking nerd.
Or unwittingly being forced into cannibalism by the preacher. And this is where we see Ellie refuse the preacher's offer to join him, and she breaks his fingers in the process. And this leads to them coming to the conclusion that the only thing they can do with Ellie is make some Ellie stew out of her. But Ellie does eventually fight her way out of this situation, and it comes down to a one-on-one confrontation between Ellie and the preacher. And after a game of cat and mouse, she does end up killing him. Afterwards, she is consoled by Joel, who calls her baby girl, which is exactly what he used to call his daughter, completing their relationship.
You complete me.
So in this episode, we finally got a conclusion to Joel's predicament. Ellie is becoming more and more hardened every week due to her experiences, and we're starting to see how their actions are coming back around to haunt them, which for anyone who knows where this show is heading shouldn't come as a surprise. I don't know why we can't get this energy every week. It's not perfect, but it is more interesting than most of the episodes we've been getting on a week-to-week basis.
Rule number 32, enjoy the little things.
Now that we've come to the final episode, the formula tells me that it will most likely be underwhelming, but typically with streaming or just modern series in general, they always try to make sure that final episode is a banger because they want you to forget about all the time you've wasted and come back for a second season. But for me personally, no matter what happens next week, it will be difficult for me to ignore just how inconsistent this season has been.
Y'all be cool. Right on.